Discovering the Natal Landscape of the Buddha International Academic Workshop.
早安，大家吉祥！欢迎回到与佛同行，发现佛陀的故乡国际学术研讨会进行第3场的发表。
Yesterday, we were treated to 5 fascinating papers that helped us to map the footsteps of the Buddha and Buddhist sages, with the final presentation even enticing us to fly all the way to England.
昨天我们聆听了5篇相当精彩的研究发表，让我们跟随佛陀与朝圣者的脚步。当然，最后一篇论文也引领我们飞往了英国。
And what better place to discover the natal landscape of the Buddha than right here beneath the big Buddha?
我想没有比在佛光大佛座下更适合发表佛陀诞生地的地方了，我想是吧？
We have the privilege today of beginning session 3 and day 2 with a paper entitled Gandhara and Pakistan's Rich Buddhist Heritage by Professor Muhammad Ashraf Khan, former director, Taxila Institute of Asian Civilizations, Quaid-i-Azam University, Islamabad, Pakistan. Unfortunately, he cannot be with us today, but Dr. Rachel Barclay, curator, Oriental Museum, Durham University in the UK, has kindly agreed to read his paper.
第3场研讨会首先欢迎巴基斯坦伊斯兰堡阿塔姆大学亚洲文明研究所前所长，论文主题为犍陀罗巴基斯坦丰富的佛教遗产。我们邀请英国多伦大学东方文化博物馆策展人戴维发表。
Dr. Barclay, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. As everyone knows, I think, I am a lover of Gandharan sculpture, but not an expert in South Asian archaeology. I look to my colleagues for that expertise, but I have been able to discuss Professor Khan's paper with them. Professor Khan was able to send us some of the images that he planned to use alongside his paper, and I have benefited from the input of my colleagues. So I hope you will bear with me while I read the paper and use those images, and I hope that I can put across the main points that he wished to make. I am very happy to take questions at the end of the paper, but again, may need the input of my colleagues. I'm hoping Professor Cunningham will join us at some point. The input of my colleagues to answer them. So between us, I am sure that we can answer your questions. Before I start, though, what I realized in preparing yesterday is that museum curators read catalogues on Gandharan art, we look at books on South Asian art and Buddhist art, while our South Asian archaeologist colleagues are reading a completely different literature, all about the sites. And we don't know of a single publication that brings these two together, that merges the conversation about Gandharan art with the conversation about Gandharan archaeology. So perhaps in the course of yesterday evening, we have invented a new project for ourselves for a future date to try and bring those two together. If I can get this to work. There we go. So if I can begin Professor Khan's paper. Gandhara literally means the land of fragrance. It was the ancient name of the tract of country on the west bank of the Indus River, which comprises the Peshawar Valley, modern Swat, Buna, and Bahadur. It was a country of rich, well-watered valleys, clear-cut hills, and a pleasant climate. There's a couple of beautiful images that you can see on the display. Situated on the borderland between India and West Asia, Gandhara belonged as much and as little to one as to the other. And there's a wonderful map here of archaeological sites of Gandhara, which shows you what a rich area it is for archaeology. Give me a moment to... In terms of the historical background, in the 5th and 6th and 5th centuries before the Common Era, Gandhara formed part of the Achaemenid Empire of Persia. In the 4th century BCE, it was occupied for a brief period by the armies of Alexander the Great, who we see here. Thereafter, it was conquered by Chandragupta Maurya. But after a century of local rule, the West again asserted itself. And in the 2nd century BCE, Greek dynasties took the place of South Asian. Then came, in the early 1st century BCE, the victorious Sakyas, or Scythians, to be followed by, in yet another century, by the Parthians and the Kushans. And here we see a beautiful gold plaque of a Scythian warrior from the British Museum. You can tell that this is a presentation by a museum curator, because I'm going to sneak in museum objects whenever I can. Even then, the tale of foreign conquest was not ended, for in the 3rd century CE, Gandhara again reverted to Persia, now under Sassanid sovereigns, and was again reconquered by the Kedara Kushans in the 4th century CE. Finally, the death blow to its prosperity was given by the Ethelites, the White Huns, who swept over the country in around 465 CE, carrying fire and sword wherever they went, and destroying the Buddhist monasteries. Again, beautifully illustrated by a bowl from the British Museum. In terms of the language and writing of the kingdom, with such a history behind them, it is not surprising that the people of Gandhara were thoroughly cosmopolitan in their culture and their outlook. The common speech of the people was an Indian Prakrit, but the script that they used for writing of this vernacular was Kharosthi, and you see an example of this on the screen. Kharosthi was a modified form of the Aramaic of West Asia, which had been adopted for official use throughout the Persian Empire in Achaemenid times. Nevertheless, it is true to say that Gandhara took its everyday speech from South Asia and its writing from the West. This intimate fusion of widely divergent elements was equally apparent in the religious life of the people, as each successive conqueror added his quota to the local galaxy of deities and creeds, number and variety went on growing. And here we have an example, and this one is particularly for Dr. Barclay, who, if people don't know, is a numismatic specialist, and he has to sneak a coin into every presentation. So this one is for him. But this coin here has an image of Athena on the first side. It's a coin of the ruler Menander. Not an image of Athena on the second side. So we have an image of the ruler and Greek text on the first side, and then on the second side, an image of Athena surrounded by the Kharosthi script. And Menander ruled from Taxila, and Buddhist sources claim that he adopted the Buddhist faith. So it gives you an example of this fusion of text and imagery and faith. The impetus given to the Buddhists by the Mauryan Emperor Ashoka and the artistic impulses emanating from the Bactrian Greeks in Central Asia led to the fruition of Gandharan art under the patronage of the Kushanas and their successors. And here we see, and I promise it's the last coin in the presentation, but it's such a famous and wonderful image. This is a coin of the Kushan ruler Kanishka, and it's a very famous one because this is thought to be one of the very earliest images of the Buddha in human form. And hopefully you can actually see in the image on the right-hand side as you look the word Buddha at the side of the image. The period from the 1st to 4th century CE particularly is a remarkable period in the history of Pakistan, when sculptural art became a handmaiden to spiritual zeal. Initially, the medium of sculptural art appears to have been grey schist in Taxila, Peshawar, Mardan, Malakand, Dir, Swat, and the Buna regions. And here Professor Khan has a number of slides showing examples of sculpture in schist. This first one showing images from the life of the Buddha. I hope you can see in the top left we have Queen Maya in the garden, hanging onto the tree. We have the preaching, and then at the bottom you have Parinirvana shown in that one. This is a marvelous image of a huge number of sculptures of the Buddha and Bodhisattvas excavated at Malakand. And finally, this beautifully detailed piece of the miracle of Sravasti. So much detail. It's lovely. And then, in addition to Professor Khan's images, I did have to sneak in a couple of the Oriental Museum pieces that you can see downstairs in the exhibition, just as a reminder of how beautiful the things that we have here with us are as well. One of the privileges of doing the paper yourself. And get that too. What's that? There we go. Other kinds of locally available stones, like pyrite, soapstone, green schist, chlorite, and so on, were also used for carving sculptures, along with the more plastic stucco to fulfill the insatiable demand of Buddhist devotees, who filled the innumerable monasteries and stupas thickly dotting the whole Gandharan country of that time. While the Greco-Roman impulse was responsible for the initiation and development of Gandharan art, it was local talent that made it what it looked like, the representation of the true society of the elite and the religious monks who roamed the area with an aura of spiritual dignity. And we see here a couple of examples of the stucco heads to which Professor Khan refers. And then he also includes images of relic caskets from Dharmarajika Stupa, showing the huge range of materials used in creating these objects, to show you the variety. Gandharan art is not just grey schist, however beautiful that is. In terms of architecture, besides the sculptures, the architecture of Gandhara was also marked by its own very characteristic composition in nature and scope, and lent very heavily towards the Ionic and Doric styles of the classical Greeks. The city plan of Sakyaputta and Taxila, and the remains of religious establishments, stupas and monasteries at Jaulian, Mohara Moradu, Dharmajika, Jinanwali, Derry, Badlapur, Barmala, Balatop, Piplan, and so on around Taxila. And those at, he sets me such a task here in terms of names of Pakistani places. So, Takhti Bahi, Jamalgari, Pushkalavati, Sari Bakhlal in the Peshawar Valley, and Zarderi in Hazara district form a remarkable ensemble of the dissemination and blending of foreign and local traditions in the art of building. I hope the translator was able to keep up with all those place names as well. Between us, we'll manage it. Professor Khan has also included here a number of examples of this wonderful architecture. So you see the Dharmajika Stupa at Taxila here. Oh, gone too fast. Can I go back? Is that where I want to be? Yes. So here we have Mankyala Stupa at Rawalpindi, founded by Ashoka in the 3rd century BCE. The Jaulian Monastery at Taxila, which dates between the 2nd and 5th centuries CE. This one is Moradu Monastery in Taxila, which dates from the Kushan period, so between 200 and 500 CE. This is the Balatope Stupa in Taxila, also from the Kushan period between the 2nd and 5th centuries CE. And here again, the translator and I have fun with names. So at Budkara, Pana, Udagram, Nimogram, Chatpat, Andanderi, Saidu Stupa, Shingada Stupa, Thokarakada Stupa, to name only a few. There are famous sites throughout the Swat and Deer valleys which provide ample evidence for the extent of this religious and cultural phenomena. And here we see one of the stupas from the Swat Valley. The decline of Buddhist art in Gandhara started with Sasanian and Hun invasions, which resulted in mass destruction of the cities and religious establishments of the area. Its societies and norms were annihilated, whilst its art and architectural production was adversely affected when monumental buildings, both religious and secular, were put to fire. This havoc witnessed throughout the areas which is now Pakistan. The Chinese pilgrim Huanzang's account of the ruined monasteries, stupas, and other secular buildings that he saw everywhere in the region is an awesome but accurate description of the horrible desolation of these once flourishing centers. However, the Buddhist faith was not completely wiped out from these areas, and we come across it in manifestations in many places, especially in today's Sindh and the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and the rock art of Gilgit-Baltistan along the Silk routes. And here Professor Khan finishes with an image of these rock carvings. And he notes that these give evidence of links between Pakistan, China, and Central Asia that go right back to the 3rd millennium BCE, with inscriptions in Kharosthi, Brahmi, Sogdian, Parthian, Bactrian, Chinese, and Hebrew, showing active movement between the Upper Indus Valley and Central Asia throughout that period in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Barclay, for presenting on behalf of Professor Kang. And it is now time for the 2 questions, please.
再次谢谢我们策展人，那也同时开放我们现场的学者专家一起提问。
我问一个，就是犍陀罗的佛像呢，特别的迷人，但是对于地区的部分的佛像的造像，在考古的部分呢，我想请教一下，就是在文物的鉴定上，刚才论文里面有提到塔克西拉古城、白夏瓦跟马丹尔、马拉喀以及迪卡这一些，它的石材是千枚岩、造石、绿片岩、绿泥石。我想要了解的是，哪个地区所出产的岩石是属于哪个地区的材质？
So the question is, she understands that the Gandhara artwork is especially beautiful, but then for the places that you just mentioned, like Taxila, Bihar, she wants to know how can you tell which artworks come from which place in regards to their material?
The second question is, when you mentioned the different materials of the statues and the artifacts, and Venerable Ruchang is wondering if you could further clarify on what material actually came from which area. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm Tiffany. Firstly, thank you for sharing with us all those beautiful photos. And secondly, always curious about the stupa, because as we traveling around Asia, we will see the evolution of the stupas in different forms and appearance. So do we know the origins of the stupa and how it started to build? Is it pure India or also a mix of different cultures?
Thank you. 2 excellent questions, one of which I will start to answer, and the second one I will hand over to Professor Cunningham. And he may have something to say on the first one. From my point of view as a museum curator, yes, it is quite a problem identifying which sites sculptures may have come from. It's not just a problem confined to Gandhara, but when you have one material used across a region at a number of sites. And then, of course, collections, so many collections were collected in the 19th century when people were not recording information about where they had collected pieces from. It is the eternal problem of the museum curator, which I know Venerable Yu Chang understands as much as I do. You dream of a collector who actually records information of where they collected things from, because it is very difficult. These days, with scientific methods, it is becoming possible with some materials to do scientific analysis that can help to tell you from the precise chemical analysis where the stone for some objects came from. But you have to have access to the scientific equipment and the scientists, and they also, of course, have to have the reference samples from the right areas. But even then, and I don't know how this applies in Gandhara, I know it's been looked at in other areas, just because a stone comes from an area doesn't mean it was carved in that area. We know that things are transported in many cultures over large distances before they are used and carved. So it isn't always helpful to know where the stone comes from, to know where it was carved and used. So it continues to be a problem. But I am now going to hand over and see if Professor Cunningham would like to add to that or answer the question on stupas. The evolution of the stupa is not my area of expertise, or whether any of our other delegates would like to.
Thank you, Dr. Barclay. Just to reiterate that point about the movement of stone, if you go to Peshawar today, actually there is a quarter there for stoneworking. And when I was last there, there are trucks arriving, for example, with boulders of lapis lazuli. Some of these boulders are about 8 foot by 8 foot, huge boulders of lapis lazuli. So I think we can probably project into the past that material was moved around, because schist is very soft. So it's not something that you would happily transport. You would probably carve on site. That's not to say that material is not moved as well, and there might have been movement of particular relics and items between monasteries as they ebb and flow. In terms of the stupa, the origin of the stupa is probably one of the most complex. There is a very beautiful book written by Longhurst, who was Archaeological Commissioner in Sri Lanka, called The Story of the Stupa. Most academics would acknowledge the origins of the stupa in the megalithic traditions of Southern Asia, and they would identify a transition at some point. It's more hypothetical than real, but a transition, because, for example, at early Iron Age and late Iron Age sites in southern India, you get megalithic tombs, so tombs built out of stone. Many of them have stone kists within them, and certainly some of the early archaeologists seems to suggest in the Deccan that there is almost a transition at some Buddhist sites from megalithic tombs almost smoothly into the creation then of stupas. So it's thought to be an incorporation of previous practice. In the area of Gandhara, actually, there is also a megalithic tradition called the Gandharan grave culture, which has its origins in about 1900 BC. But in the very later periods, actually, there are areas of these megalithic tombs being then incorporated into Buddhist stupas. So in particular, the capital of Swat, Mingora, has a very famous stupa called the Saidu stupa. And there, the monastery is built directly on top of the pre-existing megalithic cemetery. And this is thought to be an incorporation of the ancestors and the veneration processes into the new practice of Buddhism and the stupa. That is the only scientific published transition we have, and it's that one example, very beautifully published by the Italians. Apart from that, that is the sort of the position that there is at the moment.
Let us now put our hands together again for Professor Kant with the paper and Dr. Barclay for her reading.
再一次谢谢我们的策展人。
Okay. Next we have Venerable Dr. Wei, Head of Program for Buddhist Ministry and Director of Humanistic Buddhism Center at Nantian Institute of Australia. Her paper is entitled The Importance of the Buddha in China During the 16th Kingdoms and Assimilation of Chinese Sage King and Buddhist Chakravartin. Venerable Dr. Wei, the floor is yours.
接着我们邀请第二位学者，南田大学佛教研修学系系主任暨人间佛教中心主任觉伟法师。论文主题为佛陀在中国16国时期的重要性，中国圣王与佛教转轮圣王的童话。掌声欢迎。
Thank you very much for this opportunity. The world looks rather different from this angle. My paper continues from the previous presentations in that we travel from the natal landscape of the Buddha, from his birthplace, all the way through to Gandhara, and now to China. So but it also departs. It also departs from the previous papers in that I'm a historian rather than an archaeologist or a museum curator. So I don't have beautiful pictures for you. I have only boring texts. This is the only picture I think you'll find. My presentation is about a particular interest of mine. I'm very interested in acculturation or assimilation. How did Buddhism end up being one of the three main religions of China? If you see, Confucianism and Taoism we can understand because they are native, but Buddhism had a lot of competitors. Many religions came into multicultural and multi-ethnic, multi-religious China through the Silk Road. And first of all, I should have put China in quotes, because China is not a fixed land mass. Its boundaries have changed over time. And it was called the Central Kingdom at that time, and China is a very recent phenomenon. The master narrative of how Buddhism came to be is that it filled a void during the 16 kingdoms when Confucianism and Taoism could not explain why these native religions allowed the nomadic conquerors to take over the kingship. That was the master narrative. Now, to me, I felt that there must be a lot more. Most people, when they study about Buddhism, they looked into the more flourishing periods of the Tang Dynasty. But I thought something may have happened during earlier years, and that's why I focused on the 16 kingdoms. And in my study, I thought, let's look at politics. There must be a reason why the Prince Siddhartha chose to be born in the Kshatriya caste. Kingship is important. So let's start with kingship in ancient China. Chinese intellectuals idealized their kings in the past, starting from the time of Confucius, and they called them Sheng Wang, sage kings, essentially using the model sage kings of Yao, Shun, the humane kings. And later on, the title moved from Wang, Sheng Wang, to Huangdi, even higher. Okay, he's the all-supreme ruler. And Qin Shi Huang became the first emperor using the name Huangdi. That was in ancient China. Now, when the nomads came into China, they were uncomfortable with the term Huangdi because it suggests that they have bloodline hereditary succession. They must come from the yellow emperor, Huangdi, who is Han. And the nomads who conquered the northern part of quote-unquote China is not Han. So they were uncomfortable with Huangdi. So what could they use? So they started looking at alternative titles. They went back to Wang. Okay, Wang. Wang has 天地人. So it's about human, earth, and the Tian, which is heaven, and the combination of them, the ruling of all. It is quite interesting that Tian in China is quite different, although it's heaven. In the early days, it was not a place. It was really a supreme being, Tian. That's why the king is known as Tianzi, the son of heaven. So when they move when the nomads came in, they looked further and they say, why don't we adopt another title? So they looked back further into ancient civilizations and they found that at that time, the contemporary time in India and Southeast Asia, there was another term being used called Devaraja. Devaraja, they translated into Chinese as Tian Huang, the heavenly king. So then now, it gives these nomadic rulers a heavenly status. Instead, so their right to rule does not stem from their bloodline, but the heavenly status. So it's still the son of heaven, 天子 connotation present. Then, so they used later on into the term Chakravartin as being used in India at the time, in the Gupta Empire. Chakravartin, the wheel-turning universal monarch. The Chakravartin wheel turning. Why is the wheel so important? I'll explain in a little while. But during that time, when the Indians had wars or when the kings had wars, they used the chariots. The chariots is a symbol of royalty because only they can have the bronze, which is very expensive to build the wheels for the carriage. And a Chakravartin is one whose wheel can turn and turn and turn. This is universal. It won't have any place to stop. So therefore, it has a huge land, huge conqueror. So they can conquer, their land is very vast and wide. So now, there is a consideration of using this term, Chakravartin, 转轮圣王. So let's look at what the Chakravartin means. Chakravartin is characterized by the 7 jewels, 七宝. And the chief jewel is the wheel jewel. So as I told you, the importance of the wheel because it shows that the king rules over a vast area. But there's also another treasure, and that is the sagely counselor. Having a counselor who can then advise the king how to rule, and more importantly, when to fight, and so that he can win the war. So the Buddhist innovation is coming up. So first, we see that these nomadic kings started by adopting the title of Tian Wang. During the 16 kingdoms, one particular kingdom is called Later Zhao, Hou Zhao. In the Later Zhao, the founding emperor is Shi Le. When he came to power, getting his attention were not just the Buddhist counselors, but of course the native Taoist and the Confucianist counselors, and wanted them to use their titles, Huangdi, for example. But for a brief moment, there was a very important counselor called Fo Tu Cheng. Many people know of Fo Tu Cheng. Many Buddhists know Fo Tu Cheng as one who knows a lot of supernatural power. But he's much more than that. So Fo Tu Cheng managed to convince Shi Le to adopt the Tian Wang title, but very briefly. Later on, Shi Le's successor, Shi Hu, assumed the throne. When he assumed the throne, Fo Tu Cheng came together with him and persuaded him to use the Tian Wang title. But how is he going to exemplify this Tian Wang? Aha, here is some interesting research. From the records from the region of Ye Zhongji, it documented in just over 100 characters a very interesting episode. It said that at that time, Shihu commissioned an altar carriage, and it was during the Buddha's birthday time, that is 10 feet by 20 feet, and it had a Buddha image in the center, a 4-wheeled cart with 9 dragons above that. And when the wheels turn, you see that the wooden figure in the middle that was placed before the Buddha is almost like washing the Buddha, rubbing his belly. 9 dragons spew water, plus that we've got the 10 monks would circumambulate the Buddha, come to the center, half bow, and offer an incense. This is 1,300 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. 1,300 years ago, what fascinating technology. How did it come about? And of particular interest is 9 dragons. All the Sanskrit materials that I have read said 2 dragons, 2 nagas. So where did the 9 dragons come from? So, we see this, first of all, as a very innovative display of legitimacy because it took place not just on Buddha's birthday, it was also the ascendance of Shihu to become the Tian Wang. So he was Dengji, he was actually ascending to become the sagely king, the heavenly king. And this particular display of the 9 dragons and 2 dragons. In the Lalita Vistara, we see that we've got, oops, where am I? I think, can someone replace the battery or give me a new clicker, please? I know it's racing on, I don't know why. Okay. So 9 dragons, the symbol of 9. 9 is a very auspicious number in Chinese culture and history. The number 9 sounds like forever. And for the emperor, 9 dragons means very high in heaven. So only the emperor can use 9 dragons. So I was actually very fascinated when I saw that description and saw that on an altar carriage there could be 9 dragons. So it must have royal symbols. So what we are seeing here is that the entire Chakravartin model is embedded into this carriage. We have the 9 dragons, and the monk at the center rubbing the Buddha's belly is none other than the sagely counselor Fo Tu Cheng. So Fo Tu Cheng, and that carriage, the altar carriage, represents the chariot. So the entire Chakravartin model is on this altar carriage, but why? Why was it that the Buddha could be used in such a scheme? So what we see now is that Fo Tu Cheng had very wisely, through skillful means, upaya, brought in this Buddha's birthday. Buddha had 2 choices. The Prince Siddhartha was Ashita, the counselor, the advisor, or rather, Ashita, the fortune teller, predicted that the Buddha would have 2 career paths. One is to become the Buddha, and the other is to become the world conqueror, the universal monarch. And what the Fo Tu Cheng has done is to allow this particular altar carriage to represent the ascendance of Shi Hu. To choose, instead of being a Buddha, he has selected to become the world conqueror. So that's why his ascendance to Tian Wang is significant in this carriage. And in order to do that, he changed the 2 dragons into 9 dragons to symbolize his authority. He now has the sacred authority to rule and to adopt the title of Tian Wang, the heavenly king. But why would Fo Tu Cheng do that? Buddhist sagely counselors at that time wanted to bring the Dharma to the government because they would like people to have a good life. The best way is to go through the kings. So they bring in these Buddhist teachings. They become the advisors of these kings for day-to-day governmental affairs. And at the same time, they help the kings to use the Dharma to rule. So winning the favor of the kings, they are actually in great competition with the Confucianists and the Taoist counselors. So they used this particular opportunity to help establish the sacred legitimacy of their kings. But in case you think that the path is smooth, it is not. In fact, most successes are very short-lived. For example, you will find that Shile, only the before Shihu, only adopted the Tian Wang title for less than a year, and Shihu, after Fo Tu Cheng passed away, he reverted to the Confucianist Huangdi title. So we see that it is not an easy path during the early days, but we see the effort that has been made and the creativity that ensued. And they have left behind a Tian Wang Chakravartin legacy. This particular model now helps explain to me what happened. In the past, I was wondering why Fujian, why some of these kings in the 16 kingdoms would wage a war in order to capture Tao'an, in order to capture Jiumoluoshi, Kumarajiva. Why would they fight a war just for one person? Now I know. Because they are trying to establish their legitimacy to rule with a sagely counselor who is considered to be the wisest of the time they were captured to put by their side as their counselor. And Lu Guang retained Kumarajiva when he set up the later Liang kingdom. And Yao Xing later on actually invited or captured Kumarajiva back to his kingdom. So the importance of the Chakravartin model. Later on, these Tian Wang, or heavenly kings, evolved into Ren Wang, humane kings, in the kingdoms that ensued. So what we see now is that Buddhism and politics, they were never separated. Separation of state and religion, not in ancient China. In fact, Buddhism grew as a result of this assimilation between these kings, sage kings in ancient civilization, adoption of Devaraja, Chakravartin, and forming its own Tian Wang, or the heavenly king, in China. I find that this altar carriage that took place during Buddha's birthday in a very obscure gazetteer turned out to be a precious lens into acculturation. It tells us that the naturalization of Buddhism is not easy. They had to use very many different means. These sagely counselors have to use different means to help people. So it brings back to me what humanistic Buddhism is. It is about what people want. At that time, the rulers wanted legitimacy to rule. Second, it's about what people during that time want. They need merits, peace, and harmony during a time of war during the 16 kingdoms. And having this altar carriage parade through the city giving everyone the opportunity to bathe the Buddha, to witness the king as a heavenly king. That assurance is so important. So what people want. And using Buddhism, what the Buddha said, using the Buddha's birth story to reinforce and to secure people's heart. And that is what's pure, and that's what's wholesome, and that's what's beautiful. This, in fact, tells us, and I think my team here from the Buddha's Birthday Education Project, who have been here with me and we've been working on bringing the message of humanistic Buddhism to the world today. And I think that this particular episode is and should serve as an inspiration for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venerable Zhe. In your position as the MC, I'm following your script to ask you a redundant question. Will you be happy to take questions?
Only if they are easy.
Okay, we're going to open it to the floor now, and we have 15 minutes, so feel free to raise any questions, and a microphone will be delivered to you.
How many minutes? That is not in the script.
Well, I'm the MC now. You follow my lead.
各位老师、各位师父、各位学者，大家上午好，我是佛光大学的学生。刚刚听到师父的报告，我很感兴趣的一点就是，刚刚您谈到佛都城为石勒做弹车，把2龙玉佛改成了9龙玉佛，就是整个我其实很感兴趣。其实，在秦始皇统一中国的时候，他有一个政策，就是书同文，车同轨。其实车同轨那个时候，中国我就想，皇帝那时候登基，是不是在他登基典礼的时候，也会有类似的呈现？比如用怎么样规模的车子，用车子上的装置是怎么样？那佛图城它这个车子呈现，在石勒之前，它是不是有类似的案例？它是在延续了石勒之前的统治者登基的一个程序，又把佛教的元素加上去的，是我自己感兴趣的一点，我想请教一下，谢谢。
I have a very bad memory. Can I take one question at a time? Thank you. This particular question is about the use of chariots. Whether chariots have been adopted by the Chinese emperors prior to Shihu during the later Zhao kingdom for ascendancy onto the thrones. I do not know if chariots have been used as a symbol for ascendance to the throne. But what I do know is that chariots are used by emperors when they go to their rituals, for example, to Huangshan, to all the various mountains where they have to perform rituals to Tian, to heavens. And this parade in itself, this procession, is a demonstration of their legitimacy and how grand that procession may be. So chariots is extremely significant. Not many people can afford these grand chariot processions. It is true that rich people may ride on chariots instead of walk. Most peasants just walk. However, to be able to afford a whole retinue and procession, it's generally only the royal family and the aristocrats who can do so. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure if the chariots was a symbol for ascendancy to the throne. I'll have to do more research. But we have seen chariots in processions, and they're very grand parades.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe it's time for the next question.
你好，是李玉珍。我觉得这篇文章是非常的精彩，但是呢，有一个系统上的一个问题， 就是您刚刚有那个 you just define the meaning of Chinese 天 as a superior being. I don't think it's a correct definition because at least before Song Dynasty, 天 is a space. Okay, let me explain in Chinese. 就说那个中国的天子，它其实不是像基督教的那一种像拟人化的天。他的天子是说，他的祖先因为有承袭了这个天命，所以他们变成统治者，所以他的子孙的代表皇帝，他可以作为一个皇帝来统治。那您用到文中的用到那个圣王的那个概念，那个cultural hero 的那个 idea， 那个是 New Confucius 宋代才开始有的东西。好，那在这个最少在魏晋南北朝之前，好。这个是一个五行运作的，就是它那个天命的概念里面是跟你的宗族有很大的关系联系在一起的。那佛教呢，它提出来就刚好把它转掉。佛教就说你不是，佛教提供你一个 universal kingship， 就说你是因为你的 personal merit， 好，就是你个人修行达到一个成果，弘复佛法之后，你才能够变成一个统治者。所以它刚好把这个中国的这种祖先系统的这个 kingship 刚好打掉，
是的，
所以他才会这个天王他变成是，因为我现在以胡人嘛，要跟你汉人在一起，那我当然要找一个比较是宇宙性的一个平衡，我就不去讲说你是胡汉之分了。所以这个就是后来为什么武则天她也要用佛教的这个 kingship 来打破男女的那个不同。
是的，
所以这个就是从一个所谓的一个 local 的一个家族式转换成为一个全宇宙式的平等个人的王或者王的这个权利。我觉得就是跟您就是交换一下，好，这是那个天的定义。
对 ，Thank you very much for the clarification. Let me try to repeat what has been said, and this is absolutely correct that the value of Buddhism to China, which is what I'm trying to bring out in this particular essay as well, that the traditional Chinese concept of the king, I thought I had 5 minutes, the 15 minutes, no? The traditional concept of the king is that it has, in China, is that you have hereditary succession. That means it has to be bloodline from the yellow emperor. That is traditional. So when the Hu people or the nomads conquered this space, we find that that's not possible. They don't have that legitimacy to rule. Therefore, they looked around for alternative titles, and that is when they found this possibility from the Buddha, because the Buddha accumulated merits to rule. It's because of his past life karmic merits that he's able to become, or has a choice of whether to become the universal monarch or the Buddha. And therefore this story, this so-called story, this legend, becomes very useful. And during the 16 kingdoms is where I first find the first use of such an example and characterized by this altar carriage. Very efficient, very innovatively displayed. So, in my study of acculturation, that is what makes sense to me as the source of how Wu Zetian, who is the only female emperor in Chinese history, also adopted the Chakravartin title and model. So it didn't start in the Tang Dynasty. I was just trying to trace back. And the earliest I found is in this particular episode, where it was not just adopted in name, it was displayed publicly as well. The correction that the correction that was made was this concept of heaven, Tian, or the heavenly being. Where did it come from? So whether it started during the Song Dynasty, that heaven was adopted from Shangzhou. during much later.
Dynasty, yeah.
Yes. So the whole idea of a 圣王 could 圣王 you see Chakravartin already used 转轮圣王. So the title is used earlier. However, the whole idea of heaven in the early days during the ancient classical Chinese civilization, that was what I was referring to. We say 天子, 天命, which is heavenly mandate from heaven. That's why I have the right, that the emperor has the right to rule. So heaven was not necessarily a place. The place came much later. And I brought that up because of the concept of Deva Raja. Deva Raja means that it is a ruler of the heavenly realm. And that was adopted from outside of China. That you can adopt, I am good enough to rule the heavens. And therefore, this particular Chakravartin, or this particular ruler, is good enough to rule China, or so-called kingdoms. That's my understanding, but the clarification here is that it's not that heaven already started in the early days. If I understand you correctly, you're saying starting early days is already representing a place. Yes.
Kingship, but
Yes.
what I'm trying to clarify is
天
Chinese meaning of
天
Tian. So
yeah.
it's a space in Chinese system.
From ancient times.
Yeah, from Shangzhou, Jiagu.
From Shangzhou.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe we have time for one more question.
Do.
And we seem to have seen Professor Cunningham raising his hand for a comment or a question.
I hope it's not against protocol to ask a question. I very much enjoyed the presentation and the sort of rationalization for the adoption of the carriage and the process. When did it fall out of fashion? So you very meticulously identified the process by which it was adopted, and the description is fascinating. I look forward to seeing a life-size one. But at what point do you think it fell out of usage, and why?
I don't know.
Ah.
I really don't, because Buddha's birthday was such a big event. During the Northern Wei dynasty, I don't know when it fell out of fashion, but I do know that even up to the Northern Wei dynasty, which is about 200 years later, there were still massive parades in the capital city of Luoyang. And in fact, it's not just one carriage, but over 1,000 carriages. Can you imagine? Well, over 1,000 floats, beautifully decorated and parading around the Luoyang capital city. And we have pilgrims from all over the world, like we do now, all descending upon Luoyang. So we know it has been brought up to great heights. But today we don't see it as much. But I know that Venerable Master Xingyuan, in the past and even now, we have the altar carriages. We have our Buddha birthday, Buddha bathing carriages parading around Taipei City. Yes. So what we see today has historical significance. And that's, I think, what I want to put forward in this paper, that everything has conditions.
Yes, thank you.
You're
Thank you very
welcome.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to the professors for their wonderful discussions. This concludes the third session for this morning. Thank you very much.
我们第3场论文发表到此圆满，现在是茶叙时间，请我们10点20前准时入席。
And it is now time for tea break, and please return to your seats no later than 10:20 a.m. Thank you very much.
love to travel because it helps me to think and find the answers I've been looking for. 你好。
在这边提醒一下，我们车号 CL3849、CL3849 以及8793PA、8793PA 以及6367XC、6367XC 以及6272ZC、6272ZC，麻烦请您移驾到1楼，将您的车子移走。我们楼下会有服务人员为您引导。车号 CL3849、8793PA、6367XC、6272ZC， 请您现在至1楼将您的爱车移动，谢谢。
这里就是三国了。三国了。应该三国后面，三国后面没有，但是它中间还有一段。
Venerable Yolu used to be my college classmate, and we've stayed in contact since she returned to Taiwan. I've always been curious about Taiwanese religions, and so I accepted her invitation and took this opportunity to explore this sacred site.
So how do you find this event?
It's so amazing. It's so amazing to see so many different religions come here together.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why this event is called the Reunion of Religious Associations. You know, in Taiwan, there are many different religions, and everyone worships a different god or a deity. But people show respect for the different beliefs. And so this event celebrates religious harmony and peace between the different religions.
Yeah, I see that. Thank you so much for bringing me here today.
My pleasure.
And by the way, is this an annual event?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I know where I'll be next Christmas.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. After attending the Reunion of Religious Association, I have discovered Taiwan to be a place filled with religious beauty.
个人修行的功德破了你家天下这个嘛，怕一下。所以它的题目很好，但是我只是说你要把那个中国的这个弱点更清楚的。他佛教讲得很好，对，当然他就是中国道统中可以影响到这样子。我就在想说，他们觉得是这样。
Here I am at the Foguanshan Buddha Memorial Center in Taiwan. This is an unforgettable day, a day when I've left heavy footprints in my heart with the colorful costumes, mysterious yet lively dances, and a strong religious atmosphere. Next year, I shall come back again and complete my pilgrimage on foot. I love Taiwan. I love this beautiful, pure land. Amitwofo.
'Cause this is our world, this is our time, these are our plans, we're gonna let them shine. This is our place in the human race, and we won't stop dreaming, no we won't stop dreaming, we won't stop dreaming.
I'm here at Foguanshan with a very exciting new museum that's come into the world. Behind me, you will see the Foguanshan Museum. As you can see, it's unlike any museum you've ever seen or been at. The grounds around this museum cover 100 acres. So in this new museum, we see not only is the structure different and new, but the program that they're following here is new. They are bringing in millions of people who come every year now to see the exhibits, the displays, the programs, school groups, children. This museum is the youngest member of the International Associations of Museums. And with an average of almost 10 million people a year, it's one of the most popular museums in the world. And it is become a true treasure in that sense. So when I look at this museum, as you can see behind me, there is a large Buddha image. Underneath that Buddha image is a relic of the Buddha that was the initial impetus to build this construction. And I think that it's only begun to develop its new programming. The world in the future, we know, is virtual reality. It's the computer world. It's the games. It's all of the issues which our young people are dealing with. And so when I see the thousands of school children who come through this exhibit, compared to many museums, it is so lively. It is filled with the fact that this place is open to the public. I think museums around the world can learn a lot from them. How do you bring people, how do you become part of the public domain? In what way can you bring people into your museums that rather than just have the typical museum exhibit of things in glass boxes where people are passive, here people participate and they walk around. You get exercise here. That's very good from that perspective. So I want to say to people that I believe that museums like this, I hope, are the future of the museum world. It's well worth a visit. It's one of the #1 tourist sites for Taiwan. It's actually one of the major tourist sites for Asia. To have a museum that carries this is not easy to bring about. So I want to salute Foguangshan for making, as a Buddhist group, which is a large Buddhist group, an international Buddhist group, but Master Xingyun, who is the founder of this group, has always supported education, and he's published and had his groups publish the Encyclopedia of Buddhist Art, a large 8-volume dictionary of Chinese Buddhist texts. Many research things have been done here, and now here's a museum. And this museum is both a research center, it has a place for scholars to come and do research. It is an ongoing Buddhist studies as well as Buddhist showcase. So I recommend this place. I enjoy it immensely. As you can see, it is beautiful. It's quiet, except for the crowds of people sometimes who come here. But it's one of the most interesting museum complexes that I've ever seen. So I recommend it to everybody.
这个佛陀纪念馆是为了一个佛陀舍利，是在印度一位贡嘎喇嘛，他要把一颗佛牙呀，经过好几十位法王，大家写证书，说明这个佛牙的历史来历，要送给我。
建馆供奉。85岁出家人的悲愿，以13年苦心孤诣筹建，千家寺院，100万人士点滴捐资，以民间之力缔造世界奇迹。透过建筑揭示佛法僧三宝。8塔黄瓦金顶，飞檐楼阁。佛陀住世时，7众弟子随佛修行。佛教传入中国 经典浩瀚，历经祖师们的翻译实证，才有八宗弘扬不朽功德。佛陀纪念馆不仅蕴含佛教思想，也是艺术殿堂。山门开阔雄巨，礼敬大厅殿阁壮丽，迎宾环境舒适多元，让人欢喜。佛陀纪念馆是预约未来世纪的宗教建筑奇迹，而这个奇迹就坐落在台湾的高雄。
所以我们让台湾呢能发光，心中这个佛土佛光普照。希望佛陀纪念馆的因缘呢，就成为每一个人的家庭，每一个人心中的人间佛宫。
各位学者、贵宾，大家吉祥！我们第4场研讨会即将开始，请各位贵宾陆续就座，谢谢。
Venerables, ladies and gentlemen, the workshop is about to resume. Please return to your seats. Welcome back to the final session of this exciting workshop. Yesterday, we were treated to state-of-the-art archaeological findings from the birthplace of the Buddha. And this morning, we explored the spread of Buddhism from Gandhara, through Gandhara to China. For session 4, we will be learning from scholars in Japan and the US.
今天的第4场也是最后一场研讨会。昨天我们了解到有关佛陀出生地的最新考古发现，今天又从犍陀罗传到了中国，而现在要和美国及日本的学者学习。
Our next paper is by Professor Yukio Nishimura of Kobe Design University, Japan. His presentation is entitled Planning for Pilgrimage in the Greater Lumbini area of Nepal. Owing to some unforeseen circumstances, Professor Nishimura cannot make it here this morning. We are very grateful, on last-minute notice, that Dr. Jennifer Tremblay-Fitton, Honorary Research Fellow, Department of Archaeology at Durham University in the UK, agreed to deliver his presentation.
首先邀请日本神户设计大学教授，论文主题为尼泊尔大兰皮尼园区的朝圣规划，但因教授不可出席，故由英国杜伦大学荣誉研究员 Jennifer 代为发表。掌声欢迎
Dr. Tremblay-Fitton.
Thank you. So I'm presenting this paper on behalf of Professor Nishimura. I do not have a script, but I do have his PowerPoint. So I will do the best I can with it. I have the advantage of having worked with Professor Nishimura at Lumbini for 8 years. But I am not an urban planner, I am an archaeologist. So I will do my best with it. Bear with me. So Professor Nishimura, first wanted to talk about, we're talking about the planning for pilgrimage at Buddhist sites in South Asia. So we have a few examples to look at when we're talking about Lumbini. First we have Bodh Gaya, which is an example of planning a religious site that has been somewhat out of control with planning. So it is very busy site. There's lots of constructions, there's lots of worship there, there's lots of pilgrims. So it's one example of a type of site. And then we have the site of Sarnath, which is a very different example. You can see in the images here. At Sarnath, there is no worship at the site. There's no pilgrim activities allowed at the site. It's very serene, it's very clean, it's very orderly, but it's very much an archaeological park. So these are two different examples we have of this type of pilgrimage site before we look at Lumbini. So here we have the sacred garden of Lumbini, and you can see there's lots of pilgrims near the sacred pond. And it's a site that is an active religious site. There are people from all over the world come to worship at Lumbini. So if we start quite early with the master plan, in 1969, I know that Mr. Acharya talked about it yesterday, there was a first scoping mission by the UNDP by Olchin and Matsushita, which produced these beautiful images of Lumbini. The next sort of impetus behind the master plan was when U Thant visited the site, and he declared that it was one of the most important days of his life, and that he was really instrumental in leading for the protection of the site. So out of these visits and these scoping missions, we have the introduction of the master plan by famous Japanese architect Kenzo Tange. And this is Kenzo Tange here, arriving in the Lumbini Garden on the elephant in 1972. And we also have a picture here of Ban Ki-moon visiting Lumbini in 2008. So I'm going to briefly talk about the master plan, which was, I believe, supposed to be completed in 1978. Look to my Nepali colleagues. The idea behind the master plan for Lumbini was it's 3 miles by 1 mile master plan with the sacred garden at the center, the monastic area that is supposed to be a monastic zone for monks from all around the world to come and live and worship at Lumbini, and then the Lumbini village. So when a visitor enters through the Lumbini village, this is the worldly world. This is where the shops are, the hotels, the museum, the visitor center, this sort of thing. And then as the pilgrim moves through the monastic zone, they're gaining knowledge. And then when they reach the sacred garden, where the Maya Devi temple is and all of the monuments, this is where they can gain enlightenment. So there's a clear path for the pilgrim to walk through and experience Lumbini. And this is a Google Earth image of what Lumbini looks like today. So you can see that the master plan very much happened this way. Some schematic drawings of what this is drawings of what the museum and the research institute look like today. And that is the Lumbini Museum today. This is an image of the levee. So this is the water that was cut around the sacred garden in a circle. And then you can see through the middle of the master plan is the Central Link Canal. So there's water connecting all of the different 3 zones through the middle. So I know we talked about briefly yesterday, but there's predictions. Asian Development Bank predicts with the new roads and the new airport at Bairoa that the pilgrims will increase exponentially in the next few years. So we really have to plan for how we're going to accommodate these pilgrims, but also protect the site and the people around it. So a few years ago, when I first visited Lumbini in 2011, it didn't look at all like it looks today. The access route was very much like this. So you access the sacred garden straight from the top, from the village up here. There was the monastic zone, but what was supposed to be the Lumbini village to the north end, there was nothing there. There was just the museum and the research institute. So one of the first projects we had for the JFIT, UNESCO Japanese Funds and Trust, Phase 1 at Lumbini, was to change all the visitor entry points. So here you can tell that this is from a architect and planning project because of the beautiful schematic drawings they've done. So there was a plan to put in the central canal through the middle, or to expand the central canal through the middle and provide pedestrian ways through the central way. And then on the next to that, the roadway for only electrical vehicles, I believe, and bicycles. So there wouldn't be any vehicles driving through the master plan. And then of course there is also motorized boats going up the canal, so you can also take a boat up through the canal, as you can see here. And this is also very new for Lumbini. We have electric rickshaws only in the last few years, so there have been lots of projects to provide money for local people to purchase electric rickshaws. So these are some of the new routes that were proposed. So the Central Link shuttle now, so there is a shuttle that will take you from the entrance in the north all the way through the monastic zone with stops there to the sacred garden. But another one of the main issues was, I think you've seen this a couple times now, this is some of the archaeological risk maps that we created for the sacred garden of Lumbini. So you can see here that anytime any of this pilgrim infrastructure needs to be built, you look at the risk map first, and you see in red where it says very high, can't quite see it here, that is where you absolutely should not put in any infrastructure. That is where all the precious archaeological remains are. As you move out from there, you see some of the green areas, and that's where if you need to put in sewage pipes, water pipes, anything like that for infrastructure, that's where you should do it. So it's a very clear map for developers for the Sacred Garden. And here we have, oh, and Professor Nishimura's team has gone even further to talk about the different zones within the Sacred Garden. So we also have areas where he would like tree shaded. And then there also, we're going to talk about preserving the views, so that looking at the view sheds of this Sacred Garden. So we don't want things to be cluttered up around it. You want to be able to be in the Sacred Garden and experience it without being distracted by outside views. So we have some more schematic drawings. I'll quickly go there. Oh, so through the tree shade zone, this is areas for, so there's specific guidelines for pruning of trees and of keeping everything within you can see the Shokin pillar there. So I believe they want to keep everything that you can view, be able to view the monuments through it. So none of this extra additional things complicates your view of the monuments or your experience of the monuments, but it does enhance your experience of being there. So it does need to provide shade, because Lumbini does get very hot. So the present situation of the visitors route. So we've done lots of planning where we've followed visitors throughout the site to see which ways they go and experience the site. And it is quite a confusing site when you see the way that everybody's mapped this. There doesn't seem to be a clear route that people take through the site. So that's something that we need to think about with the planning as well. Yes, you can see here, pilgrims previously were just wandering around the Sacred Garden from monument to monument. So there was a proposed change of the route. The main entrance is now through the north. And there were clear, you can see this image here. This is what it looked like in 2010. So this is just dirt paths that people have worn from where they've been walking. And this is what it looks like now. So in 2012, they began putting these pathways in. And it gives a really clear route now through the garden of how to experience it. But also, they provided pilgrim facilities, such as these prayer platforms, so that it's more comfortable for pilgrims to worship there, because sometimes they will stay and worship for hours. So this is much more comfortable, but it also doesn't interfere with the remains and the monuments. All of the pathways are edged, and all the pathways, as you can see here, were built up off the ground, so there was no need to dig into the archaeology. They were all using materials. There was lots of thought and discussion about the materials that would be used for this, because it wanted to be in keeping with local styles, as well as being confused with the monuments. So if it was brick, it would be confused with the brick monuments. But we wanted it to be durable, so they decided with a ceramic tile and soil pavement below. We thought about the types of outdoor furniture that was needed for people, so benches. So now there's lots of seating areas for people to sit and engage with the Sacred Garden without damaging any of the monuments. There's lots of signage now, so you know exactly what you're looking at, where you want to go. This is, it says June 2009, this was the main route through. And now you see it's been much more delineated now. It's much more of a main route through for people to walk. So there is also some issues that the Lumbini Development Trust, I know, and UNESCO have been dealing with people, because it's such a sacred site for Buddhists around the world, that everybody wants to build a monument there. So some of these were proposed, I believe, was this one proposed by the Chinese government? Yes, to be one of the largest Buddha statues. And here we see some drawings where Professor Nishimura has shown. In the distance there, you see the Japanese Peace Pagoda, which is at the very end. So you can see that from the Sacred Garden if you look straight down. And behind that, on a very clear day in Nepal, which does happen, you can see the Himalayas. And it's a beautiful view. So the placement of this Buddha statue would really interfere with that view, and it would be dominant. So it's competing with all of the monuments in the Sacred Garden and the natural beauty of Lumbini. So he's done some viewpoints of what you'd be looking at. And this is as it is now. You can see the Himalayas in the distance. So one thing, so that has not been built. But there's one thing that has been built, which is a baby Buddha statue. And this was built by the Thai government, I believe. Now, I think the issue with the baby Buddha statue is its alignment, its position. As you can see here, that's the Ashokan pillar next to the Maya Devi temple. And when you view straight down, so you're looking straight down the master plan here, and when you look down that central link, you should be able to see the Peace Pagoda and then the mountains. But here you see the baby Buddha is there now. You can see it better here. So this is really quite interfering. I think we have some schematic drawings. It's on the same height as the Ashokan pillar. It's sort of interfering with the view sheds down through the Sacred Garden. So I believe what Professor Nishimura wanted to talk about here was how we needed some guidelines and need to be in place for this sort of building in the future. So now we're going to move out of Lumbini towards the greater Lumbini area in Tilurikot, Kapilavastu, where we've been working for a second phase of the Japanese Funds and Trust for UNESCO project. And here we see, and I'm sure you've seen in the exhibition, the distribution of the Buddhist heritage sites in the Nepal Terai. We have many important Buddhist sites in this natal landscape. So Kodan, Tilurikot, Kapilavastu, Niglihawa, Godihawa. So there are several layers of planning when approaching these sites. The first layer that the planning team approaches is the look. They have done several surveys of the area. So they've discovered how many extra sites in the area? 136 archaeological sites in the area, doing field walking surveys. So the first step is to identify the sites, then to consult local maps and boundaries, look at where the roads are positioned and the access points for these sites. And then the second phase of planning would be to look at the core protection zones for each site, and then the buffer protection zones, and then the roadside protection zones. So all of these hopefully will make more sense in a moment. And then the top layer of planning is the actual visitor infrastructure. So the parking and visitor center, bus routes, explanation of the site, pathways through the site, all of these are really important, but first, you need to establish the protection zones that you want to protect of the site. So this sort of planning didn't exactly happen at Lumbini. So in the new sites, we would like this sort of planning to be happening. So we're going to look at Kapilavastu. This is the current situation. You have the core site, the central complex that Professor Coningham talked about. We have the eastern and the western gate. And currently, the only entrance is at the western gate. We have the eastern stupa complex and the monastery that Professor Coningham talked about out to the east. We have the southern industrial zone. We have the village of Shivagar. And there is a Japanese temple and a Thai temple already built there. And we also have the museum, which is quite far away to the west. And we also, sorry, there's monuments also to the north. We have the twin stupas up there. So it's really an unusual route at the moment. As you see, there are lots of areas that need protecting within the city, but also outside the city. So one of the projects that we've been doing has been a land acquisition plan with the government of Nepal and the Lumbini Development Trust. They've been purchasing land outside of the core area in order to protect it. We are also looking at a view protection plan for Tilurkot Kapilavastu. At the moment, there is not a lot of industry around the site that you can see, but it is increasing as the site gets more and more popular, and there's more access to roads, and there's a bridge now across the river. So that's something that has to be implemented in the next few years. And inside the site, we need to talk about a new fence should go around. We need to talk about paths and ways that people move through the site, prayer platforms, view platforms, redigging the moat to emphasize the shape of the city and its relation with the suburbs. So we have began some work on the paths based on the archaeological work. So every time we discover some new buildings within the city, the pathway kind of alters a little bit, but there is a path currently. You can see, I'm going to quick through these. So a straight path following the ancient city grid lines as much as possible, paths with linking to other paths, circular paths around the fortifications. There's lots of different ways that people can walk through the site and experience the site. We need prayer platforms. So this is some of the archaeology. This was in September 2008. These were the original paths. This is just the way that people have moved through the site. And then they began building up again these pathways using wood and concrete blocks. And these are the pathways now. So they're not permanent. They can be removed. They're reversible. They're in keeping with the style of the site, the local materials. And also, we talked about the other day, there's the Simon Mai Temple, which is a Hindu temple within the site. So local people really do need to access the site as well. And they hold lots of festivals here. So there also needs to be some areas for them to hold festivals, some sort of infrastructure for this. So I believe that is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Jennifer, now time for the 2 questions from the floor.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Would you please talk about more about the access route and how you decide the access route for visitors? You have some plan, and how you decide the entrance from the north. Also, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
There's a second question behind. You can press the button.
BPEP. It's pressed. Okay. Yeah. I'm Stephen from BPEP. It's very impressive presentation. I I can see the effort you all put in to wanting to preserve the site. Actually, my question is, whether the local population, I'm ignorant of Nepal education system, whether the education system in Nepal, the younger children, are they educated about the site? Are they informed? Do they know the treasure inside it? If the locals knows about it, I'm sure they want to protect it. All of us want to protect, but we are from the outside.
That's a very good question. The first question about the access routes, I believe that that access route is in the master plan from Kenzo Tenge through the north. I'll just double check with my Nepali colleagues. Yes, it is in the master plan. So that was set out by Kenzo Tenge in the 1970s. And that is, it was set out that way so that the visitor could enter from the village, gain knowledge through the monastic zone, and then enter. I don't know if there's any specific reason why it was set out that way in the first place. Do we know any specific reason? Yeah. Yeah, it's supposed to be the transition for the pilgrim journey. And the second question, as far as I know, but perhaps my Nepali colleague, Mr. Gannon, could answer better. We are working on efforts to help with education of the sites, especially in the greater Lumbini area, for local school children, providing materials so they can know the worth of the site. But if Gannon has anything to add to that.
Yeah, because most of the area, the local communities belongs to the Hindu and Muslim community. So now we have started to, create awareness among the school children right now, and the various Buddhist communities, Buddhist organizations are supporting in that way. Because in Lumbini there is a various international presence at the moment, like Thai, Cambodia, Japan, Canada, like this, even China. So now we have started awareness activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
再次谢谢您。
The final paper of this workshop will be delivered by Mr. Ira Block, National Geographic photographer, New York, United States. His paper is Recording the Intangible Heritage of Buddhist Pilgrimage.
今天最后一场论文发表，邀请美国纽约国家地理摄影师，论文主题为记录佛教朝圣的非物质遗产。掌声欢迎
Mr. Block, the floor is yours.
I want to thank the Fogunchang Buddha Museum and Durham University for inviting me here. I am not an academic. I'm a photographer, but I tell stories with my photography. And what I do is I bring to life what a lot of you academics and archaeologists do, so that the popular people, the general lay people, can understand things better. I've been photographing with the National Geographic magazine for over 30 years, and I've been everywhere in the world and exposed to many cultures and many people. Somehow, through my career, I developed an expertise in archaeology photography and anthropology photography. And in 2012, I was asked by the magazine to accompany Professor Cunningham and his dedicated team from Durham University to Lumbini. What I needed to do was look at what they were excavating, make interesting photographs of that, but also bring to life the fact that it was still an active pilgrimage site. So there are many different facets to what I needed to do. After I did the coverage there, I think it was a couple years later at Durham University, they had an exhibit including some of my photos on the birth of Buddhism. And that was a great honor, and today I'm even more honored and it's a privilege to have my photography exhibited in the Walking with the Buddha exhibition downstairs. So I use my photography to capture people's attention. I want them to stop and look at something and be curious. They have a different set of eyes and they have a different set of brains than people that are working in that field. The Lumbini experience was incredible for me because it started me on a path, a journey of looking at Buddhism as I traveled. And in the last few years, I've been to Laos, Cambodia, Tibet, Nepal, Myanmar, and Bhutan. And when I go to these places, I'm just curious about what Buddhism is like there. I look at the culture of Buddhism, I look at the people involved and the monasteries, and the daily life and the human side of Buddhism. So I think I'm speaking enough now. Let's take a look at some of the pictures I do. This is a photo I did in Bagan, Myanmar, where I was trying to illustrate, using candlelight, a Buddha statue with a young novice. I have to evoke this timeless imagery when I take these kind of pictures. It can't look modern. I want people to feel what it may have been 1,000 years ago. In Bhutan, I photographed a tanka, a 400-year-old tanka being unrolled at one of the zongs. And when I was in Nepal, I was intrigued by just the eyes of the Buddha here, which resemble the eyes of a monk in, I think this was in Nepal also. And the smile of a young novice Buddha in Myanmar. All these images, to me, are part of my look at what Buddhism is now, including a Zong in Bhutan. What started the journey was right here in Lumbini. And when I got to Lumbini, I was looking around and I looked at the temple and I thought, this does not evoke the past. This is very modern looking. I needed to do things to get people more interested in the mood of what Buddhism was like and where Buddha was born. So I started with people, with some of the pilgrims. I started photographing them and trying to be a little tighter on my imagery until I discerned how I would include the backgrounds. I use light very carefully when I do my photos to create these kind of moods. Here's somebody praying and the candles are in the background and the reflections along the ground create a mood where you could look at this picture and you don't know when it had been taken. This was the kind of look I was trying to get, the timeless look of, so people could feel involved when they started reading a magazine article. And things as simple as shooting prayer flags through the sunrise evokes the past for me and creates, a look that gets people involved as to what's going on. Working with shadows and shapes and body language, how people are walking. These are all interesting photos for me, and if it's interesting for me, it's going to be interesting for the general public to look at. One important thing I need in any coverage or story I do is a sense of place. The reader, the viewer needs to know, where are we? What does this place look like? This was back in 2012, and drones were not readily available at that point. And I couldn't get a helicopter or a plane there, but I knew I needed some sort of photo that showed the location. And I was fortunate enough that the team from Lumbini had a nice balloon to loan me. It was a little, yes. It was a bit rudimentary at that point because I would have no control over what the camera was going to do. We just set it up, and basically we had a little device that physically pushed the trigger of the camera. Very simple, and we just set the balloon up and, you know, hope for the best. Nowadays, you could put a drone up and you have, you could watch where it's going on your phone or whatever. Back then, we just set it up, and then when it came back, thank goodness I was shooting digital and not film, because I could actually, when the camera came back down, I had an opportunity to see if we got it or not and whether to send it up for the 20th time. But that kind of photo is important to see, okay, you know, where is this place? Where are we? And then, of course, we got into the excavation, part of what I wanted to show, the excavation and the people working. And then, of course, then the wooden posts that were found were an important part of the story, so I needed to photograph them. But what was very, very peculiar about this excavation was that it was going on in an active pilgrimage site. So as you can see, every day while the team was busy working, there were hundreds of people marching through. And at points, even you guys were impressed enough to take your own pictures. But for me, it was good because I was able to now get the emotion of the pilgrims in combination with the site. And that was an important part of the story, that this place, this holy place, was being looked at, but it was also part of modern day history. And a lot of these pilgrims came a long way to see this, the Buddha marking stone, and they would give offerings to it. And then I remember they couldn't take off the case, and somehow I had to put my camera on a stick and put it inside the glass so I could actually get a picture of the stone itself. There were times when I thought I was shooting the offerings, but I did not want to be so obvious. I didn't want to make people aware of the fact that I was there. So I thought I'd be clever and disguise my camera and my light. And I would wire it into my computer, and I could sit down below and I could see the images on my computer and press the button. I don't know what people thought the light was, or these prayer scarves I put over. I don't think my job of camouflage was that good, but it made me feel like I was doing something special. And the excavations outside were interesting because I did get to show what the area looked like. And what was really nice was that there were local people and students from some of the colleges and universities in Nepal that were really busy helping out and busy working. So it was a very great effort of different types of people. And here's Professor Cunningham. At work, but to me it looks more like paperwork. And his clothing looks a little too clean for the average archaeologist, doesn't it? But they did, they did find a couple of interesting things during my stay there, like this pottery. What impressed me even more was how the religious people, the monks, were so interested in what was going on. They really, really wanted to be part of it. They had great curiosity. And this is an example of the old, the new, the religious, the non-religious, the archaeology, everything coming together in this one magical place. One of the things you should understand, because everyone now is busy taking pictures, everyone has a, if they don't have a camera, they at least have one of these things, right? So, but photography takes thinking and learning to see, and especially my photography, because I'm not just taking something going on, I'm thinking about what I'm photographing. I don't point and shoot. I think and shoot. I think about what I need to make a picture work. And I think that's what the difference between a professional photographer and someone that just has a camera. In this case, I love the backlighting of the flags, and I saw some local, saw people making offerings to some of the monks that were sitting around the tree. And I just waited maybe 20 minutes as people went by and made their offerings, because the background was the photo for me. The people coming in finished the photo for me. And here I just waited, and you could see her hand is just out giving an offering, the body language, and I still have the beautiful flags. This is an example of what I try to do with my photography to bring things to life. And sometimes just a simple meditative photo will do the trick for me. And I always like finding pictures like this, the old and the new. So here's a very traditional person wearing a cap that has a universal sign. What person does not know this sign? Now, this is an example of 20 and 21st century marketing ability. Now, while I was there, I've discovered that there were a lot of Hindus making a pilgrimage to the temple because the Maya Devi is an important part of their religion. So I walked out among the crowds of people, and there was a Hindu camp. And being a photographer, you need to be curious. You need to see what's going on beyond where you are. And while I was there, I found this mother who had a great face, and her child, who is getting his first haircut. And so this was just something that I stumbled upon, which made for, an important picture for me. And in this case, to be a little technical, I had an assistant with me who was carrying a big light source. So if you look in the baby's eyes, my light source is reflecting in their eyes, so it draws you into to the child's eyes, and the headed hands and the colors all make this picture very important to me. The child doesn't seem too happy about it, but now I think we've heard about the weather in Lumbini, and to me, the fog and the mist was great. It created photographically, it created this mood. It looks like it could be any time in the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Because if there's anything modern around, you don't see it. And an image like this of these monks walking through the fog is just very moving for me. And this reflecting a lifestyle that could be now or could have been in the past. I work a lot at night with candles because I think it's another way to create a mood of drama. And the Ashokan pillar during the daytime would not have the look it has at night, where it stands out against the sky with the help of my lights. During the daytime, it'd be very busy, there'd be other things going on. This photo makes it dramatic and focuses your attention on the pillar. And then, oops, went a little too fast. Hey, okay. And then, of course, I photographed the important inscription. And I continued photographing the pilgrims because it was so intense. In this case, I just saw the light light up the smoke from the incense. So the Maya Devi nativity scene was very important, but I needed to get more involved with the emotion of the people. So this picture does not do it for me. So I climbed above and was able to look down at the people, and you could see in the background the excavation. So this was another opportunity to show science and culture in one image. And just, the expression on this woman's face was just so nice. It told the story for me of, how happy these people who had come a long way, taken a long journey, were to be there. And a moment of reflection. So my photographic journey has not ended. I'm still following the light of Buddhism everywhere I travel. And today especially is an auspicious day with the Buddha's birthday, and when I first got here 2 days ago, I made a picture here, and I thought as today, all right, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Block. I'm sure you agree with me. This is an interesting array of photographs. So we have now time for 2 questions from the floor.
我们现场开放。
Thank you. It's really wonderful photos. Amazing. I want to ask you, because you have some very good close-up photos, and sometimes you will let this kind of photo publish in magazine. and how you get the right of a portrait from the local people.
Okay, second question.
第二题。
我是人间卫视陈如行。基本上我成为一个电视的工作者，我对刚刚那个相片看起来非常感动。那我想了解一下，就是说不晓得您在拍摄这些是否之前，尤其特别拍摄一些有关于宗教仪式方面，之前是不是曾经有了解过那些宗教仪式的一些意义，然后才能拍摄出这么让人感动的画面？
My job is in television, and I was wondering that before you took these photos, when I saw them, it really touched me. But then I was wondering if you actually made some sort of research into their traditions and customs before you actually took these photos.
Okay, and the first question, what's so incredibly good now about digital photography is that if I take someone's picture, even if we don't speak the same language, I can go up to them afterwards and show them the picture on the back of the camera. And I get a sense if they're not happy or if they're happy about it, whether, you know, I could use it. The other thing, and this is just from over 30 years of experience as a photographer, is that when I see someone doing something and I'm going to approach them to take a picture, obviously, if they go like this, I'm not taking the picture. But I'm also very careful to read their body language, and I could tell if people are okay with me taking a photo. And the extreme is, you know, no photo, and somewhere in between I could tell whether this is going to work. And that just comes from many years of experience, and then afterwards, I will go up to them, show them the photo, and if it's some place where I could get now an email address, I will actually email them the photo and get their name and information. And the other question was, oh, the research, yes. I do about doing research. I try to research somewhat about the culture and get some information about people and what I shouldn't do, what I should do, even things, what the weather's like. But I find that if you do too much research, you have expectations that most of the time don't exist. There have been many times you'll read stuff online about a place, what things were like, people will tell you, and I get off a plane and I get there, it's totally different. So there's a balance you do, like everything in life. You take all your information and you decide what's going to work. Sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. And what's the definition of luck? Luck is when opportunity and being prepared collide. So you just have to, as a photographer of the type of photography I do, you just develop a sense of things after many, many years of, it's not that, it's one thing being a technical photographer. Yes, I know how to operate the camera, I know how to make pictures look good, I know how to create photos. But there's another sense that comes after many years of experience of, you're walking down the road and you have to make a decision. Do I go left or do I go right? You know, you don't know where the picture is. And I think it's just years of experience in knowing where to go. You just have a feeling about you.
And what a culmination of luck. Thank you very much, Mr. Block.
再次谢谢您。
Open discussion.
综合讨论。
The organizers realized that limiting to 2 questions per presentation may not be sufficient for this invaluable, timeless workshop. Hence, There is time now for us to ask further questions of any of our presenters.
主办单位原址开放每位发表者仅限2人提问哦。那此次因缘也非常难得，现在呢开放所有与会人士，您可以向任何一位学者提问，请把握因缘。
我是。你好，大家好，我是佛光山南华大学视觉艺术系的就是江美英哦。我这次能够听到这档国际性的发表是很感动哈，然后也很感谢，可是也很羡慕啊。我们这边有文化部的这个李主任，还有我们史前博物馆的张馆长，这样子的一个发掘，我们在台湾是没有机会的哈。可是这边我也想问一个问题哈，因为我本身也在大陆从事考古发掘，也有要加入帮忙，就是做那个 UNESCO 的那个申请的那个蛮多的村寨的计划啊。可是我们面临到一个问题，就是居民哈，所以我不知道的包括了这一个就是康宁汉教授，或者是Acharya教授，还有西村教授哈，就是我因为这几天我没有听到就是周围的居民他们的对于这个南毗尼园的这个保护措施、大环境保护的想法跟看法哈，所以不知道能不能请教这个问题哈。那这边的话，因为去年的这个就是我们的这一个就是馆长跟夫人有到我们南华大学参观。那我们很想问的就是，你们这么辛苦的做了这个考古发掘，那如何再回到校园，然后跟我们这一个杜伦大学的这一个就是学生们，就是说我们做了一些什么？那这个有什么样子的意义哈？因为就我学艺术的人、考古的人而言，我有艺术的情怀，当然也有宗教的情怀。我们这里也有我们的那个觉明法师，他是一听到佛陀他就往前冲的哈。我们学校也有一个杜伦大学的就是传播的博士。他在杜伦大学待了6年，去年也接待了几位老师们哈，所以我们想问，就是说，这个学校方面如何把你们这一个这么重要的一个考古发掘，然后去展现给我们的学生们啊？好，谢谢。
Okay, long question. First
Sorry.
I myself am in art, and when I'm attending this particular workshop, I'm very touched. But then my question is to Professor Coningham and those who are actually at the site. In regards to how the people who live there, what do they think about your developing there and digging into their land? And that's the first question. The second question is for the Barclays who actually visited my college last year. You go out and then you do work, but then when you come back, how do you actually feel? It feels so different being out in the field and then coming back to teach your students. Thank you.
I will start, and then I'll look to my colleagues for input. What I think is absolutely clear is your question is quite correct, because these are communities there, and we've presented on work there. Now, when the program of activities was first developed, it took 2 years to develop that program. So it wasn't a program, say, developed in Paris. It was a program actually developed by all of us in Lumbini. So with the support of Alliance, they paid for 2 years of workshops, and they were very brave because they mobilized an entirely interdisciplinary group. UNESCO is a wonderful organization, but frequently they send out a consultant in one discipline, and then 6 months later a consultant in another discipline, 6 months later a consultant in yet another discipline. So for the recipient nation state, often the advice is staccato and not articulated. So in this case, it was an entirely different approach, very much an approach encapsulated in the Japanese Funds and Trusts for UNESCO. So we were drawn from practitioners, managers, planners, archaeologists, Sangha, lay folk, Buddhist, Hindu, like myself, Roman Catholic, and for 2 years we worked in workshops, we went on field visits, and we developed the program, and we then presented the program to stakeholders. And the meetings were all open, so the stakeholders had the ability of discussing and questioning. So before we even touched the site, we had 2 years of reflection and of interaction, which in my experience was phenomenally rewarding. Then at the beginning of every season, we have a stakeholder meeting where all of the stakeholders and the community come, and again, we reiterate exactly the work we will do. Some of the sites like Tilrakot Kapilavastu, the local municipality actually established a liaison watching group who would go every day to the site to see. So actually, the integration is key, and also, as you can see in all of the slides, we don't put up fences which you cannot see. For health and safety, sometimes we put up strings so people don't fall down very deep holes. But actually, we've believed in complete transparency. The other aspect is at the end of every season, we hold a debriefing and we do a site tour. Now, we also listen. And 2 years ago, the local community, particularly at Tilrakot Kapilavastu, said, your team has made some wonderful discoveries. Every year you come, you work for 2 months, you show us the most amazing buildings, and then you cover them up so that when our family and friends come to visit, there's nothing to see. When pilgrims come, there is nothing to see. And so at that point, actually, we reflected and we agreed at that point that actually we needed to start a program of conservation also. So that actually the project that we started in 2011 is completely different from the program where we are now. And I think we've all learned from that. So community, we understand. We've also been undertaking survey of community. So not just a one-off, but longitudinal survey. So how many people from the local community visit the site now, so that whatever interventions come with pilgrims in mind, we can understand the impact on the local community. And then finally, there are a series of museums. And this year, we've been studying communities not only who visit the museum, but to understand more about those who don't. Why don't they visit? What might they visit? And looking at the future of the museums, those museums, yes, must be there for orientation of visitors and pilgrims, but also for the local communities themselves. As our colleagues like Mr. Block and also like Mr. Ganin and Mr. Kosh Prasad have figured for us, the communities are some 80% Hindu, 15 to 19% Muslim. We need to celebrate their heritage as well and to include it, not to push them out of sites or away from sites. So your question is absolutely key. We need to integrate, interact, and be receptive, and to change our activities. I don't know if my colleagues would like to. Second question was de-acceleration. What happens when you go back? For a start, I find at home, when you say, I would like a cup of tea, you're directed to the kettle. which is a catastrophe. I think for all of us, our colleagues don't quite understand where we have been and what we are slowly becoming, because all of us started as archaeologists, and it's like going down a telescope. You start with a broad view, and then as your career progresses, you get further and further down the telescope until all you see is just a small hole in front of you. Working on sites, living sites, is a way of actually reflecting and developing self-awareness and critical self-awareness. And I think Ira's presentation did everything I hoped it would, because you cannot work on a site and not actually be affected by the very power of that site. Now, going back to Durham, I think actually it helps us to look at Durham as well, because as we've seen, it's a massive medieval monument, but also it's a living monument. And we did a survey very recently on the World Heritage Site. Something like 70% of the visitors to our own World Heritage Site have tertiary education. County Durham probably has about between 20 and 25%. So we are not engaging with our own communities around Durham. So if we can learn from our experience in Lumbini, in engagement of communities, hopefully we can bring that back and reflect and improve our own reflections.
Thank you very much. Well, we may have time for just one more question. I saw a hand back there. The microphone, please.
My name's Irene Pickard, and I'm from the Nantian Temple in Australia, in Wollongong. And I would like to know if I travelled to the site, would I be allowed to go through some of the soils like the monastics did and the students did, or is that a process or a waiting list, or do you just go through the debris of what you're finished with? Do you have to have expertise in helping you?
Who would like to take the question?
Thank you. It's a really good question because we feel that this is also one of the encroachment, but we have to address the aspiration of the pilgrims working in the religious sites. Actually, this is not allowed to play and touch or collect the soils from the archaeological sites, which is strictly, strictly banned. But if you have interest to come or join as a volunteer, there's a process. So we may invite and we may incorporate you while they will carrying out the archaeological excavation activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you agree with me that we don't have enough time for all the questions. So I'm afraid, in the interest of time, let us thank all our presenters here for their quality presentations, that they have inspired us with new learning and growth in our faith. Let's give our scholars a big round of applause.
我想大家都非常同意，此次的研讨会具有高水准，也给我们相当大的启发。更重要的是，增进了我们的信仰。再一次给我们所有发表者热烈的掌声。
And thank you to all delegates for your participation too. Commencement of the closing ceremony. 2018 Walking with the Buddha International Academic Workshop Closing Ceremony, Commencement of Ceremony.
2018年与佛同行发现佛陀的故乡国际学术研讨会闭幕典礼，典礼开始。
Addressed by host organizations.
主办单位致辞。
Let us first invite Venerable Ru Chang, Director of Fo Guangshan's Buddha Museum, to deliver concluding remarks on behalf of Fo Guangshan.
首先，我们邀请佛光山佛陀纪念馆馆长如常法师为我们致辞。
我们所有的与会发表的学者以及所有的来宾，大家佛诞节吉祥。
To all delegates and all presenters, Happy Buddha's birthday.
我想这2天呢，我非常的兴奋到几乎都睡不着觉，就是因为我们请来了在2011年到2017年在蓝毗尼县址挖掘考古的原班人马的团队。
I have been very excited, so excited that I have had many sleepless nights. This is because I'm now welcoming the original exhibitors and curators.
2天9篇的论文，从英国杜伦大学到尼泊尔，到巴基斯坦，到美国，到澳洲，让我们看到9篇的论文，从加毗罗卫国的古城到蓝毗尼园，以及犍陀罗佛教遗产的部分，以及现在尼泊尔圣地的一个规划，非常非常的精彩。我们是不是再以热烈掌声谢谢他们
？9 fascinating presentations over 2 days, covering the Natal landscape, Gandhara, Pakistan, Afghanistan, as well as from scholars from all over the world, including Europe, Japan, America, and Australia.
这些专家学者透过科技以及考古调查，还有文献，让我们首次在台湾看到非常珍贵的历史现场，以及首次的佛教遗址的考古现场，就在佛诞节的今天的台湾，距离现在2600年。
Through innovative display of technology, art, archaeology, and all means that are available to us today, we are able to rediscover the Natal landscape here 2,600 years, from 2,600 years ago.
我想这是过去，在佛陀纪念馆成立的时候是2011年，当时康宁汉教授的考古队，当时也在尼泊尔开始进行考古，同样的年代是2011年。
The Buddha Museum started in the year 2011, and that is also the same year that Professor Cunningham was starting his archaeological expedition.
在佛陀纪念馆2011年过去的5年，我在2010年跟国家文物局呢提出了一个5年的展览策展的规划。
About 5 years ago, I started a series of discussions with the State Administration of Cultural Heritage in terms of 5 years of curation of exhibitions here.
这5年的规划非常的重要，也就是5年能不能把佛陀纪念馆国际化，走上全世界，变成国际的博物馆，非常很重要的一个策展计划。
These 5 years is critical for the development of the Buddha Museum to become an international museum.
到底从尼泊尔的佛教怎么传到中国，乃至佛陀纪念馆怎么会在台湾而兴起？所以2011年，我们透过国家文物局借来了山东青州佛像的造像，这是佛教已经在中国大陆本土化的非常重要的文物。
If we look at the spread of Buddhism from its homeland in Nepal through the Silk Road and into China, the first exhibition What's important is this return of 1,000 years Buddhist sculptures of Longxing Temple in Qingzhou, Shandong. It contains extremely important artifacts that marks this spread of Buddhism.
这是佛教传到中国大陆的东方。第2年，我们做了佛教传入中国的入口，也就是丝绸之路的19个博物馆的佛教艺术的特展，光照大千。
So after the spread of the Buddhism into the East, we have the second exhibition about the Buddhist art along the Silk Roads, light shining on the universe.
从东边到西边，紧接着第3年，我做了南方的佛教艺术。佛教又怎么从东边传到了浙江、江苏整个南方的部分？
From east to west and then on to the south. The next exhibition is Auspicious Radiance of the Seven Jewels, an exhibition of Southern Chinese Buddhist arts.
第4年，我们做了佛教又怎么传到了北方，所以我们跟首都博物馆借来非常重要的明清的水陆画，同时举办了学术研讨会。
And from the south up to the north. And the 4th year, we have the meeting in the Dharma, selected Ming and Qing dynasties, water and land Dharma service paintings from Baoning Temple, Anpilu Temple, and Pilu Temple.
从佛教在东西南北中那发生之后，最后1年我做了佛教最重要的一个发展，也就是北京故宫所借来的佛教文物的紫禁佛光。
And the 5th year, we have our most important exhibition, Buddha's Light in the Forbidden City, Buddhist art collection of the Palace Museum from Beijing.
5年的计划定位了佛陀纪念馆在博物馆界、学术界的定位，同时在这1年，我也开始思考我能不能找到源头。我很幸运遇到了联合国教科文组织的林志宏教授。
These 5 years helped to establish the Buddha Museum as an international museum. But I've often also wondered, how can we go back to the source? And so we are very pleased to be able to meet you.
他介绍了我当今非常重要的杜伦大学，正把同样的我们历经了5年的展览，他们的成果报告也将在5年2011年的时候呈现。所以呢，我非常的兴奋，我说我一定要做这个展览，也就是今天的与佛同行。我们终于把佛教起源的印度，古印度，现在的尼泊尔，整个串联起来了一带一路。
And hence, I was very excited when I know about this exhibition on Walking with the Buddha. It's an opportunity for us to return to the source of Buddhism, to ancient Indian subcontinent, and now Nepal. So together now, we have been able to put together the whole history of the One Belt and One Road.
我非常兴奋地看到杜伦大学以及尼泊尔考古局的局长，还有我们的白馆长跟我们国家地理杂志的摄影师，完整的记录下来。在这1年里面呢，我呈现非常亢奋的状态。
I'm very pleased and excited because through your work, Professor Cunningham to Durham University, through Nepal, through your work in the Oriental Museum and the photographs of Mr. Ira Block, we are able to now put the entire missing jigsaw pieces together.
我们看到千年的佛教文物借由杜伦大学的非遗文化生态的一个串起2600年的佛陀历史的时空，真实的还原了现场。
We see that over 2,600 years of the time and space gap has been bridged, and now we bring it together back to life again.
所以今天的研讨会，事实上还有起了一个很关键的人物，也就是能够协助我们佛馆举办，那就是海外都监院院长满谦院长。
A very important person is Venerable Manqian, who has helped us because of a position in the international affairs to be able to put us all together.
以及我们伦敦道场住持妙祥法师。
And of course, Venerable Miaxiang, Abbess of our Fo Guangshan, London.
以及佛光山所有的团队，大家。
And also everyone in Fo Guangshan.
我想紧接着大家会非常关心，那到底佛陀纪念馆未来跟杜伦大学做什么，以及联合国教科文组织怎么样的发展？
I think many of us may be curious to find out what are the next steps, what else will we do with Durham University and UNESCO.
这几天康宁汉教授跟满谦法师，我们每一餐都在讨论这个问题。
For every meal for the past few days, Professor Cunningham and Venerable Manqian as well as Venerable Ruchang together have been exploring this topic.
累计起来已经有3个的计划。
Oh, we already have 3-year plan.
第一个，也就是希望这样的展览呢，我们再回到尼泊尔，是康宁汉教授由衷的希望，我们能够再跟尼泊尔当局能够合作。
First, we hope to be able to return to Nepal, so a collaboration with the Nepalese government.
第二个计划呢，就是再从尼泊尔回到杜伦大学的一个项目的合作。
Second, we hope to go from Nepal to Durham University.
第3个部分也是我们满谦海外督监院由衷的希望，从杜伦大学前进联合国的展览合作。
And our sincere hope is to move from Durham University to the UNESCO.
所以欢迎现场的贵宾随时关注佛陀纪念馆的网站。
So we hope that all delegates here constantly watch out for the Buddha Museum website for the latest news.
所以最后我很感谢在座的几位我台湾的老师，也就是我张玉腾博士，从一路走来给我的鼓励，以及那个我们徐纯教授，还有我们李志勇李局长，还有我们李地方李主任，谢觉你们陪伴着我们，让佛教的博物馆能够在全世界发光。也感谢觉法师特地从澳洲回来，帮我主持这一场诗语的部分。
Finally, I'd also like to thank all my professors and all the museum directors who are present here today, as well as Jue Wei coming all the way from Australia to help in this particular, in the organization of this exhibition and conference. Thank you.
最后还要谢谢一个单位，在这一年里面，我跟杜伦大学东方博物馆的白馆长跟夫人学习非常非常的多，他们让我看到英国策展人的精神跟对于展览的坚持，以及专业的团队，也让佛陀纪念馆的团队在2个专业团队互相的努力合作之下，圆满这一场的展览以及学术研讨会，以及把东方博物馆的典藏品犍陀罗的32件文物空运来台，让我们展出。
Finally, I must thank the Durham University's Oriental Museum, Dr. Craig Barclay and Dr. Rachel Barclay. I've learned a lot from you during this period, your professionalism and your generosity in learning to us the 32 artifacts that are present in this exhibition. Thank you very much.
谢谢大家。
再一次谢谢馆长如常法师的致辞。
Let's also now welcome Mr. Kosh Prasad Acharya, former Director General of Archaeology, Government of Nepal, to deliver the concluding remarks.
最后，我们也邀请尼泊尔国家考古局前局长为我们致辞，掌声欢迎。
Most Venerable Abbot Shinbao, who is not present today with us, but his presence yesterday was very, very inspirational and will remain inspirational forever. Venerable Director Ru Chang, Venerable Man Cheng, Venerable Miao Sheng, I see her there, and Professor Cunningham, Mr. Rai, Dr. Barclay, Mr. Block, another Dr. Barclay, Dr. Tremblay, and so many people. I do scare taking their names because my pronunciation of Chinese name is not very good, but I can pronounce Mr. Frankly, who is a friend of mine for so many years. Again, I have this opportunity, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to bring the greetings from Lumbini, the birthplace of Buddha, and the natal land of Buddha, Kapilavastu. And Venerable Director Ru Chang's speech was really, really heart-touching. It touched me and also encouraged me to join hand to say something in her line that in many cases, the conferences, the seminars, we used to conclude very successfully, then after forget. Just one proceeding is published, it is circulated at the most, then there used to be no follow-up. But here, in this case, your wish to continue this exercise seems to be very, very, very encouraging, and I'm really touched by this. Should I have to stop for the translation, or the simultaneous translation is going on? It's going on. Okay. And yes, what I have heard is that there is a center in Kathmandu which is been established of this museum that could be instrumental in connecting people from Taiwan and Nepal and even Durham. In London also there is an international center of this museum. So we could be in touch, not only in touch, be active to achieve our further goal. For example, there are certain things, again, I want to join and repeat Venerable Ru Chang's spirit that continuation of this type of exhibition in Nepal, in Durham, and ultimately in international forum, capturing the opportunity of Buddha Jayanti, because Buddha Jayanti has been adopted by the UN system also. So where we can get a platform to do something, for example, the exhibition of this type in somewhere outside in a bigger arena. So that also is one possibility. And I want to repeat about the possibility of doing something in Lumbini, because the space is there, material is there, we are there, and your kind support, if your kind support is available, so we can think about doing the exhibition in Lumbini in next year, 2019. I think I'm not very, very ambitious in saying so. So, and through this, we can prepare our exhibition for 2020 also through UNESCO or UN system. So let us try to join hand like this. And Mr. Frankly, I want to thank yesterday also. I thanked you for the Alliance support, and now also I think there could be a role for Alliance for again mobilizing the archaeologists in SAARC region, which you are doing now also, bringing people from Pakistan, Sri Lanka, not Sri Lanka, India, and places like Myanmar to Nepal, to Kathmandu, and to Lumbini to share our activities to share our experience in archaeology. So likewise, you can, again, do the same, which will be highly appreciated because this has not been done for quite a long time. We used to have a SAC Archaeological Congress, which is not active these days, these years. So if Oriental Heritage Sites Protection Alliance comes forward, I think this will be a noble, meritorious job. And I would like to invite all of you to come and see Lumbini and Kapilavastu in Nepal. May I ask you how many of you have been to Nepal, to Lumbini? So, yes, the number seems to be very, very good, but still there are many hands not raised up. So would you like to come to Lumbini and Kapilavastu in Nepal? Oh, so it is a very encouraging response. So we are ready to welcome you in the birthplace of Buddha and the Natal landscape of Prince Siddhartha in Nepal. And before taking leave from you, I would like to thank you, the organizers, for this wonderful organization of the conference and the exhibition. We are talking about also, we are taking inspiration from here that we in Nepal also will try to do something. I don't know that we can match this, but still, still this is one of the ideal and inspirational for us that we will try to do. And yes, there were sleepless nights for many of the organizers because Gyanin and myself were told at the last minute by the airlines that you cannot fly for technical reason. And I feel really sorry for the sleepless night here for the organizers to arrange our ticket through different route. And ultimately, it was made possible, and I really like to thank you all and feel sorry for that also. And I'd like to thank for your wonderful hospitality as well. Willing to see you again. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Acharya.
再次谢谢我们局长。
Gift presentation.
致赠结缘品。
On behalf of Durham University, Professor Cunningham would like to present a special gift to the Foguangshan Buddha Museum in appreciation of all staff and what they have put together on this special exhibition and workshop. Let us invite Venerable Ru Chang, Director for Foguangshan Buddha Museum, to receive this gift.
英国杜伦大学联合国教科文组织康尼汉教授在此也特别准备了结缘品，要致赠佛陀纪念馆，也请我们满谦法师、如常法师代表接受，掌声。
In return, Venerable Manqian and Venerable Ru Chang would like now to present Professor Cunningham with our group photograph as a memento for this auspicious occasion.
在这边也特别准备了我们此次研讨会大合照，以及我们上头看到一个小太子像。再次谢谢康尼汉教授。
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much to all delegates, some of whom have traveled very far to be present.
同时，我们这边也特别准备给我们的贵宾，也由我们满谦法师、如常法师代表接受。
And also a presentation from the Nepalese government.
我们非常的丰厚的礼物，特别也准备了佛陀纪念馆呢。
We thank them very much for the gift. And now in exchange, the Buddha Museum. This is a splendid exchange of gifts. So here we see the group photograph and the little Buddha.
也代表送给我们佛陀纪念馆馆长如常法师。
The presentation from the Buddha Museum.
这张上头呢，是我们在昨天开幕式大家的大合照哦。
Thank you very much to all delegates who have been very patient sitting through 9 presentations over the past 2 days. We are also grateful to the presenters for their challenging work to put together a lifetime worth of research.
感谢我们来自全球各地所有学者及有心人，共同针对此次的研讨主题探索与互相交流，让人感受到深刻对全球人士对佛陀的一个尊重，不仅促进了佛教发展，也让我们佛教更加人间化的创造当下，放眼未来。
In the spirit of this workshop, we want now to dedicate the merits of the day to the awakening of all sentient beings. We look forward to meeting again in the near future to celebrate the Buddha's birthday through the intersection of academia and exhibition.
让我们将今天所有的功德回向一切众生，早日觉悟成佛。期盼未来大家在共聚一堂，以学术及展览的方式庆祝佛诞。
Today is very special because we celebrate the Mother's Day here in Taiwan, a befitting day to commemorate the discovery of the Maya Devi Temple. So, to all mothers who are present today, we sincerely wish you a happy Mother's Day. And to everyone, happy Buddha's birthday.
今天日子非常特别，因为刚好正是台湾的母亲节，也是一个值得纪念的一刻哦。所以我们要对现场所有的妈妈们衷心的祝福你母亲节快乐，也祝福大家佛诞节快乐。与佛同行，发现佛陀的故乡国际学术研讨会就此圆满。再次谢谢大家。
Walking with the Buddha, discovering the natal landscape of the Buddha, International Academic Workshop has come to a fruitful